Hello, welcome to another episode of Exploring Rust. This is a video series in which I'm learning Rust and trying to explain what I think I've learned. So in this video we're going to take a look at writing test code for Rust, and I'm going to refer to this blog post that I've already created. I've just got to add the video to it on blog.caveofprogramming.com. Otherwise I'm never going to remember all the different things that we can do here. So apparently there are two kinds of tests that you can create for Rust programs, and you can basically only test libraries. So for that reason I'm going to create a package that includes a library, and I'll also add a binary executable that uses that library. And the two kinds of tests that you can create are unit tests and integration tests. So we'll take a look at that. First thing I need to do is create a new library package. So here I'm going to say cargo new, I'll call it numerical, and I specify --lib to say that I want to create a library. Then I can go into there and I should be able to do cargo. I can't do cargo run because I've not created a binary yet. So let's actually create source/main.rs so that I can actually also run this. And then if I go to main.rs, which is here, I can put a function main in there. See if I can make that bigger. Let's have a print line and a hello or something. Hello. So I should be able to run that. Let's run it. There we go. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a library that has just one function in it, which is going to be a function for calculating the factorial of a number. So when I did that cargo --lib, that created lib.rs automatically. So I can open that. And here it is. And you can see that it comes ready-made with a function called add. And it's also got this mod test, a submodule, which contains an example test. I'm going to delete all this though. What I want to do instead is I'm going to right-click the source folder and go to new file. And we'll create a file called numeric.rs. So we're going to have a numeric module, and the package is called numerical. In there I'm going to have a factorial, a pub factorial. That's a function, has to be public because it's private by default. That's going to accept a integer. Let's make it i32 and it will return i32. So now I want to implement this. How should I implement factorial? I think I can say if n is 0, the factorial of 0 I believe is defined as being 1, so I'll put 1 there for the return value. Else we can use recursion, and I can say n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1. And I believe that should give me a function that creates the factorial of the number passed to it. So to actually use this, I've got to load this module somewhere. So if I go to lib.rs, which I've deleted everything from, I can do pub mod numeric to actually load that numeric.rs file. Then if I go to main.rs, I should be able to use that now, I believe. Let's say use, and I need the package name, which is numerical. And there I have the module, which I called numeric. And in there I have factorial, which I want to use. So having done that, now I should be able to print stuff out. Let's put a pair of braces in there and factorial, and we'll try the factorial of 5. If I've remembered everything correctly, which is a big if, then this might actually work and calculate the factorial of 5. So I'll do cargo run. Okay, I missed something out of this where I've got pub mod numeric. I've missed off a semicolon. That's not a big deal. Let's put that in. Try again. There we go. So yeah, the factorial of 5 is indeed 120. So that's correct. Now I want to write test code for this. So what I want to write here is a unit test. A unit test being a kind of test that tests some unit of your software. So this is a unit. It's a function. And here I'm going to create a submodule. So I'm going to say mod, I'll call it tests. And we want to import all the stuff from the super module. That is the enclosing module, which is this. So let's say use super : I think. And then we can write a test. So to write a test, I put hash, square brackets, and I put test in there. And then let's have a function. I'll call it doesn't have to have any special name. I'll call it test factorial 1 though. And we can have a test there. I also have to annotate this mod tests with a hash. Now what's this? This is CFG brackets test. As you can tell, I've been through this already. And the reason for that is I have tried recording this video several times and each time it went really badly. But I did learn more or memorize more with each attempt. So hopefully this is, well, if you're watching it, this is the attempt that finally succeeds to an acceptable level. So this is short for a configuration. And what this does is when you run cargo test, it sees this bit of configuration and I guess it just loads this and then it will run the tests that are marked as with hash test within this. So a test, for example, could do assert exclamation mark and then we could put something that's true in there, like let's just try putting true. Now I should have a valid test. Okay, it doesn't actually test anything, but I think that should actually work. So let's go to the command line and do cargo test, see what that does. So yeah, unused import. Yeah, so there was a unused import, that's true, but the tests have essentially run. So now I should be able to put a valid test in there. So if I go back to this submodule, I could do, for example, assert, let's try factorial of 4 maybe. So why can't I select that? Every time I try to type something, it just adds to it. Okay, factorial 4, that should be what? 4 times 3 is 12 times 2. I think it should be 24. So let's say equals 24. You can also put a message in here, I think, which will come out if this fails. So let's say factorial 4 should be 24. I'll try that. So if I run this, yeah, it says, where are we? Running one test, and it's run test factorial 1, and that passed, it's fine. So if that actually fails, so if I put like an extra number there, so it's not right anymore, if I run that, let's get rid of this side pane. You can see it says test failed. Has my text come out anywhere? Must have come out somewhere, surely. Yeah, okay, my text, I don't think my text has come out anywhere. Maybe it's up here somewhere. No, because I started running it right there, and I'm surprised that no message has come out. Let's check my notes here. What did I do in there? So yeah, so I ran through all this stuff. I've typed this up on blog.caverprogramming.com, and you can see what I did before. It's all this stuff basically. Maybe I'm just mistaken about that message thing. I don't know. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't have a message argument, does it? Oh, I don't think so. Yeah, well, in any case, this works. So you can also do assert underscore eq like that. Let's have a few more of these tests. So I'm going to copy this and we'll paste that in and that in again. And I'll have test factorial 2 and 3. So factorial 2, test factorial 2, that could just do assert. And then test factorial 1, let's have assert equal. So assert equals, we can just pass 2 things like this, I think. Can I get any documentation by hovering over it? Doesn't look like it. I might just search for it. So what if I go to a browser and search for assert eq rust? Let's take a look at that. Yeah, you can see you can use a message here. So let's try that. So here's assert eq. I think I should be able to put factorial 4 should be 24. And then, so this should fail. Let's make this one succeed. So I'll set that equal to 24. So we're asserting that this is true. And here we're asserting that this is equal to this. Let's see if the message comes out this time. So if I run it, missing tokens in macro argument. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to do something with this as well. Let's change this back to assert and 24. I'm going to use that later. So if I run it, where is my message? So what did I actually write? Factorial 4 should be 24. Can you see that in here? Am I just overlooking it? Let's search. Factorial. Oh, it is there. You know, I have this sometimes. It's like a kind of blindness. There'll be something that's actually there and I'll look even directly at it and I don't see it. My eyesight is basically fine. But like once my landlady at some place I used to live asked me if there was a ladder in the cupboard, and I opened the cupboard and there was a massive ladder there, and I said, no, I can't see one in here. I said that multiple times. I was really looking for it, and then she pointed out it was literally there in the cupboard. So, and I also have that with programming sometimes. Okay, so it is there. The message is coming out. All right, mystery solved. What else do I want to show you? I'm going to take a look at my notes. So here are my notes. We've covered that stuff. Yeah, you can have multiple tests. Yeah, I want to show you how to run multiple tests and also this ignore annotation. So if I go back to this, you might have one or more tests that are really, really long. So most of the time you want to ignore them, and sometimes you just want to run those tests specifically. And you can do that if you put a kind of annotation or whatever it's called on there called ignore. So now we've got 1 and 2 are going to run by default, but this third one here is not going to run by default. Let's try that. So I'll clear this and run it. So you can see that what happened. Yeah, 3 was ignored, 1 failed, but that's because I've said that the factorial of 4 is equal to 245, which it clearly isn't. So let's set that back to 24. And actually let's do factorial 0 because that ought to be 1. So that's probably an important thing that we should check here. So now if I run this, we should get 2 tests pass. Yeah, and 1 is ignored. So to actually run the ignored tests as well as the others, we can do -- include ignored, except there's another pair of double hyphens there for some strange reason. Let's try that. Let's do cargo test -- and then -- ignored. No, that's not right. Include ignored. Include ignored. This should run all the tests. So if I run that, you can see it runs all 3 of them. If I do cargo test -- and then -- ignored, this should just run the ignored tests. So in this case, we just run the test that is marked with ignored. So that could be potentially quite handy. Another thing we can do is we can test code that is supposed to panic. So let's copy this. We'll have another test. Now, obviously my factorial isn't going to panic. I can't really think of any way to make that panic. So I'm just going to fake it. Let's put a panic in here in the test itself. So normally the idea would be you've got some function which under some circumstances panics, and you want to check that it does panic under those circumstances. So in this case, let's say this is a massive panic, and we want to check that this panic is actually occurring. So we can do that with an annotation here. We can say should, something iffy with my select. Let's delete that. Should _ panic. And optionally, so you can just use it like this. Actually, let's just try that. Let's call it test factorial 4. Let's run this. So if we do this, all the tests pass. Yeah, but I want to get rid of that ignored thing. So let's try that again. Just do cargo test. So yeah, we've run 3 tests. We've excluded the ignored test, and the should panic test passes fine because the panic is correctly occurring. Another thing we can do with this though is check the actual text, the actual panic text for a given substring. So I could say here, I think it's expected equals, let's say that we have to have the word massive in the text from this. Let's type massive here. So if we run this now with cargo test, I've just messed that up, haven't I? That's completely the wrong place. Look at that. Okay, and I'm having trouble with my mouse. Okay, this is supposed to go here. So after should panic, we can put in this. All right, I think that will work. Let's try that. Yeah, so all 3 tests that aren't ignored passed. And to prove that it is actually checking for this substring here, let's change that by adding something to it, and then we expect that test to fail. So now the should panic test has actually failed, which is what we want. So let's change that back, and now it will pass. So we can run specific tests, or like a subset of test, by just adding the name here. So I could run test factorial 4, for example, and then it will just run that particular test. However, it's actually just looking for this text as a substring in any of those test function names. So if I do test factorial without the 4, make sure that's deleted, it's going to run all of them in this case because they've all got the substring test factorial in their names. Now in theory there is a way to specify an exact name, but when I tried it, it didn't work, so I'm not going to try that again. There are people saying it's changed and it doesn't work anymore, but usually you don't really need to definitely specify that a test with one particular name is definitely run. Normally you would give them all different names anyway, so I don't think that's a big problem. Another thing that we can do here is we can test whether a function returns error or okay. So again, I'm going to have to kind of fake that like I did here, being as I've not got a function that returns error or okay, or I could create one, but it's easier just to kind of fake it, I think. So if we create a test function here, let's copy that one, paste this in, and call that test factorial 5. And I'm going to say that this returns result. And that means that, let's get rid of this. I'll get rid of assert, I'll get rid of that. And we'll get rid of should panic. And now I'm going to just return error. Actually, this is a template type, so I have to specify here what error would contain and what OK would contain. Let's say error. Now there are some choices here that are going to result in some message about the termination trait not being implemented, which I don't really understand. So I'll try to put unit in there and a string in here. So then we should be able to have an error with a unit in it, I think. And this test should fail because I'm returning error. And obviously normally this would be returned from some function that you're trying to test. So let's just try that and see if it fails correctly. So if I run this, okay, expected string found unit. What did I do wrong here? Oh yeah, maybe that's the OK value right there. Let's try string there, and this should be what error contains, I think. Let's try that. So if I try to run that with cargo test, oh gosh, now I've got this, the trait termination is not implemented for string, which I don't really understand what that's about. Yeah, this should be the OK value and this should be the error value. But why aren't I allowed to do this? What if I put string there and then put a string in here? And if this doesn't work, I'm going to just look at what I did in my write-up. Okay, so let's try that and see what that does. Yeah, it doesn't like that either. Okay, what did I do that actually succeeded? So here's my test code. Yeah, I said unit and then string, and okay has unit in it. Am I just getting confused? Possibly. I'm a little bit tired. Let's put this in there. Oh, come on. All right, I'm going to have to delete this. Maybe I need to restart my computer or something. Get a new mouse. So, error should be able to contain unit, I think. Let's try that. That's what I've got in my write-up, isn't it? No, I've got OK unit. You know, the issue here is with my brain. Yeah, so let's try an error string here, like bad result .toString, because I need to convert it to a immutable string. I think that will work because, okay, the error should contain a string, and here it is. I've got a half-functioning brain today, like 50% at best. But there we go, yeah. So test factorial 5 has correctly failed. But if I return OK instead, it ought to be fine. So OK can contain unit according to this. So let's put unit in there and try to run that. And now it passes. So that's fine. That's what I expected. All right, we got there in the end. So you can see that if you have a function that's going to return error or OK, you could just return the return value of that function from your test function, and then it passes if it's OK, and otherwise it fails, which definitely could be quite handy. Now, the only other thing that I want to show you here is integration tests. So integration tests, unlike unit tests, are tests that test how different functions in your API or library work together. So the unit tests are just testing individual units. An integration test might test multiple different functions and see that they cooperate nicely with each other. So to do this, what we have to do is we have to create a directory called tests alongside the source directory. Let's just clear that do ls again. So here you can see my source directory is right there. I'm going to create a directory, just use makedir, called tests. And in tests, I'll use touch. I'm going to create a file called, this could be called whatever I want, as far as I know. Let's call it, there's no reason why I can't call it numeric again, I think. So numeric.rs, I think that should work. Can I still run it, actually? Let's just check that. Yeah, it's fine. And then let's go to that file. So I'm going to open tests numeric.rs. And in there I can put integration tests. So this it's just testing the library in the same kind of way that you would use code in general externally to the library. So we have to have a use package name, module name, and we can also optionally import whatever we want to test, like directly. So I want to test factorial, or I could just import numeric and then specify numeric factorial later on, I suppose. Put the semicolon in, and then we have the same test annotation, I think. So what's that? That's a hash, and then test in there. Let's call this, let's make it pub. Not sure if it has to be pub. Let's try it without. So function test factorial again. Let's call it integration. And it's not a real integration test, obviously, but we can use things like assert and assert equals. There's probably more of them. I haven't actually checked. And in there, yeah, maybe equals makes more sense. Let's do factorial of 3. That should be 6. And let's say fake integration test failed. All right. So that should be loaded, and it should be run when I run cargo test, because it's going to check that test directory. So if I do cargo test, where are we? Has it actually run it? So yeah, it did it in like a separate section down here. Test factorial integration, okay. And if that fails, so if I put 61 there instead of 6 and run that, then we've got failed, and it does stand out pretty nicely. We should see the error message there, fake integration test failed. Yeah, so that's all fine. And I think that's everything that I wanted to show you today. So you can find all this summarized and typed up on blog.caverprogramming.com. And I'm not sure what's next. Yeah, actually I do know what's next. Next in the Rust documentation, I believe it launches into developing some kind of app. So I'll probably do that next. I'm going to have a read of it, try and read through it. And if I don't like the app, then I'll try to do something a bit different. But I might just make a video that's just kind of following along with developing whatever kind of application it gives us next in the documentation at that point. I'm definitely beginning to feel that I actually could write a Rust app. And I think Microsoft Copilot is actually very useful, because I can get that to write, demo apps, and then I can follow along and see if I understand them or not. At some point, I'm obviously going to have to try to write Rust programs. That's, in my view, the only way you really learn. But there's still more to look at in the documentation next, so there's going to be more videos in this series. Okay, so until next time, happy coding.